Thinking about this concept of freedom today, freedom, and what people think about freedom. You know, there are many people in the world today who think they know what freedom means. They think they know what it means to be free. They think they know how to attain freedom, how to become free. And then there are some people who think that there's no need to be free at all because we are free. And so there's no need to even talk about freedom. We already have it. Freedom is something that is misrepresented, and wrongly defined in today's society and today's culture. And so I'd like to ask you, what do you think about freedom? When I say the word free, when I say the word freedom, what is it that comes to your mind? What do you think it means to be free? Is it even needed today? Is freedom even needed? Do you need to be free? And if so, how do you go about obtaining freedom? You know, freedom is priceless. It's invaluable. Nationally, it costs people their lives. It costs them blood to free a nation from bondage, to free a nation from oppression. Lives are lost in wars to win freedom. That's nationally. Comes at a huge cost. But when you think about it personally, freedom is very different. When people think about freedom on a personal level, things become very, very hazy. Everybody agrees that people have to fight to keep their country free. But when it comes to personal freedom, you have all sorts of theories and all sorts of personal beliefs. You have the religion of Buddhism, which is growing in America rapidly through yoga and all other practices. Buddhism says that to attain freedom, to be at liberty, one has to kill all his or her desires, has to snuff out all desire, and suffering will cease, and then you'll have freedom. And then you have the secular worldviews. You have this universal view that's being propagated all around this country and the world that emphasizes individuality in freedom. This is very well expressed by the Associate Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, Anthony Kennedy. He says this about liberty. He says this about freedom. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and mystery of human life. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept. Individualism. Everybody gets to define their own meaning of freedom. Now, I've come up with a story to illustrate, and this is fictitious, it's my own story. I've come up with this story to illustrate this false claim, this false definition of what freedom is. This is the story of Goldfin the fish. Goldfin the fish. There was a fish named Goldfin, and he was a rainbow trout. Now, rainbow trouts normally have a green dorsal fin. That is the topmost fin. If you've seen a rainbow trout, is usually green. But this rainbow trout had a gold dorsal trout, and so they named him Goldfin. Now, Goldfin grew up in a large school of fish in the Pacific Ocean. And they swam the Pacific, and Goldfin grew. And as Goldfin grew in that school of fish, he began to hate the rules of the school of fish. He didn't like the rules. He didn't like the order. And over time, Goldfin began despising all the other fish in the school. They tried to relate to him well. They tried to build a relationship with Goldfin. They were very welcoming, but Goldfin wasn't welcoming. And so as days went by, Goldfin thought, I need to find my own way. And he began to wander off in the vast expanse of the Pacific. And he swam, he dodged the sharks, dodged the whales, and he stayed alive. And then one day Goldfin thought, the sea isn't enough. I want to be free. There's more beyond the sea. There's something above the surface of the water. So Goldfin swam to the surface of the water, and he said, land, there's land. And Goldfin went to the shore, and he came onto land, and wouldn't you know it, Goldfin with his two lower fins, when he reached the shore, began to walk on shore. Goldfin began to walk on shore, and he thought, freedom at last. Those foolish fish in the school, swimming down there in the ocean, missing out the land. And so Goldfin walked on land for a bit. And then after a while, one of his lower fins gave way, and he fell onto his side, and Goldfin just lay there on the shore on his side. And he began to think, what do I do now? And there's really nothing that he could do because, fish need what to breathe air? They need water. That's where they get their oxygen from. And after a while, Goldfin ran out of breath. He just lay there. No one to help the proud Goldfin now because all the fish were in the sea. And he just died. Goldfin died, and somebody must have picked him up for lunch that day. But in any case, Goldfin wanted freedom. And Goldfin's freedom, if he thought about it, was in the water. Goldfin's freedom would have been in the water. Why? Because Goldfin was created for the water. His freedom would be found within the boundaries that he was created for, within the water. And when we try to define our own freedom, when we try to create our own boundaries without no knowledge of the purpose for which we're created, without no knowledge of our limitations, it is not freedom. It is not freedom at all. In fact, it is bondage, and it leads to death. So the question that I have for us this morning is, how does one obtain freedom? How does one obtain freedom? If you turn in your Bibles to the Gospel of John chapter 8, and I'd like to read for us from verse 30 to verse 36. John chapter 8, 30 to 36. As he spoke these words, many believed on him. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed in him, "If you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How can you say that you shall be made free then?" Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, whosoever commits sin is the slave of sin. And the servant abides not in the house forever, but the Son abides forever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed." Here Jesus is in the temple treasury there in Jerusalem. And what has just happened is that the Pharisees and the scribes have brought a woman to him who was caught in adultery. They bring the woman to him thinking that Jesus will condemn the woman and ask them to stone her. And they bring her to Jesus, and Jesus says, "No, I don't condemn her. In fact, I forgive her." And then he does something which was not expected. He reaches down in the ground, and he draws a line and says, "If anybody here is without sin, you cast the first stone." And there's nobody who can do that because they all know that they're with sin. And then this begins this squabble between the Pharisees and Jesus about truth and about who Jesus is. And Jesus is trying to explain that he is true, that he is from God. But the Pharisees will hear nothing of it. In fact, the Pharisees say, "No, we are from Abraham. He is our father." Jesus comes straight out at them and says, "No, the devil is your father." And Jesus, at the end of this passage in chapter 8, he says, "I am." He equates himself with the great I am of the Old Testament, whom the Jews worship. And when he does that, they are about to stone Jesus. The woman was not stoned, but now they're about to stone Jesus. And it's in the context of this that Jesus tells them how to obtain freedom. How to obtain freedom. Firstly, I want you to notice that freedom is obtained through faith and obedience. Freedom is obtained through faith and obedience. You see, there's an inextricable link between freedom and faith. Freedom and faith. Now, if you have doubts in your mind, you know this, that doubts are debilitating. Doubts are debilitating. Faith, on the other hand, is very freeing. You know what doubt is like? Doubt is like taking a thick rope and lassoing a bald eagle while it's in flight and binding its wings so that it cannot fly again. Faith, on the other hand, is like the scissors that clips those ropes off of the bald eagle so that it can soar high in flight. Faith and doubt. So as Jesus is speaking here, as Jesus is revealing his identity, it says in verse 30, as he spoke these words, people began to believe. It is those, notice this very carefully, that it is those who have believed that he will address about freedom. He will tell them how to obtain freedom, those who have believed. Now, just for your information, in the Greek, the word believe and faith mean the same thing. Of course, in the English language, you have two different words, faith and belief, because you can't say I faith. You have to say I believe. So you have two different words in English. But in the Greek, they mean the same thing. And Jesus here is addressing people who have faith. The question is, what do they have faith in? It says, as Jesus spoke these words, they began to have faith. They began to believe. Their faith was and was to be in the words of Jesus. The words of Jesus. These are words of truth. Later on, Jesus would say in the Gospel of John in chapter 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The truth. Jesus himself is the truth. And his words are truth. And I'd like to tell you that faith has an object. Faith has an object. It always does. Faith always has something as its object. And it should have truth as its object. Now, you might say, I don't have faith in anything. I have no faith at all. The truth is, everybody has faith in something or the other. You say, no, I'm a scientific person, and my faith is in science, or I believe in science. Well, by saying that, you're saying that you have faith in science. You might say, well, no, it's not science. For me, it has to be experience. Only if I see it, I'll believe it. Well, then you're saying that you have faith in experience. You might say it has to be self. It's all about me. Well, then you have faith in yourself. Or you might say, no, I have nothing to do with faith at all. I'm a person who doubts. I'm a skeptic. Well, then let me tell you that then you have faith in doubt. You have faith in doubt. Your doubting faith actually is faith in doubt. Well, you say nothing to do with faith at all. Nothing to do with faith at all. Well, if you say that, then you have faith even in that statement. You see, faith, like truth, is inescapable. It's unavoidable. Now, if that's the case, if faith is unavoidable, instead of having faith in things which are unsure, which are vague, which you know nothing about, one should have faith in something that's sure, something that is solid, something that is absolute, and that is the truth. That is the truth. Well, you say, I have faith in what's true for me. What's true for me? I have faith in that. I'd like to tell you that truth is not relative. Truth is not something that you can make up for yourself. It's not subjective. It's objective, and it's absolute. What is absolute? It's above the confines of time. It's above the confines of space. It's above the confines of your flesh and mine. It's above the confines of our mind. It is absolute. And that's why, because it is absolute, because it's above all of these confines, it has the capacity, the ability to set free. And so Jesus says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Now, the truth that he is referring to here, of course, are his words. His words. If you notice there in verse 31, he says to those who believed on him, if you continue in my words, if you continue in my words, then you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. You know, truth demands obedience. Truth is demanding. So freedom is obtained not only by faith in truth, but it is also obtained by obedience to the truth. Obedience to the truth. You see, once you believe in something, once you believe in the truth, there has to be a continuation in that belief. The continuation in that belief is needed. And that continued belief is evidenced in your obedience to the truth that you first believed in. Let me say that again. Continued belief is evidenced by your obedience to the truth that you first believed in. It's not as if you get up one day after believing and say, well, I believed the truth, and now I figured it all out the next day. No, that's not how it works. It takes time. It takes continued belief in the truth. And then Jesus says, this will bring you to a fuller knowledge of truth, that is, of himself and of his word. Now, I just want you to imagine, along with me, how many of you have brought your imaginations here this morning, by the way? Did you bring your imaginations? If you brought your imagination, say imagination. Okay, that's just half of your imagination. No full imaginations? Say, I imagine, and you imagine, and we all imagine. Come on, say it. Okay, now I think you have your imaginations. Now, we're in the Sahara Desert, all of us, from SALT. We're in the Sahara Desert doing a SALT retreat. And we're taking, yeah, maybe. We're trekking in, this is in Morocco, by the way. They actually do it. You can look it up online if you want to. They give you tours in the Sahara Desert in Morocco. And we're doing this, and we get lost. And we're trying to make our way back to civilization. And soon nightfall is coming. Finally, it is night. And we get lost. We're going around in circles. And you know, they're in the desert, there are mirages. I don't know if they happen at night or in day, but there are mirages. And then, as we're there in the Sahara Desert, in the night, in circles, all of us, we finally see a light. One of us sees a light and says, there's a light there. And one of you say, well, no, that's just a mirage. A few others say, no, that's a real light. And we believe that that is a light. And then we start following that light. We start following it. We continue following it. And then we notice that after a while, that one light, behind that one light, there are many other different lights. And there's actually a whole city there. And we find our way to the city because we follow that one light. We continue following that one light. And we eventually reach civilization, having continued after we believed that that one light was a real light. That's what freedom from your own wandering in life is like. You first believe, and then you begin obeying what you believe, and then you're set free. That's what freedom is like. And I ask you this: have you ceased your own wandering in life, or are you still wandering? Have you believed in truth? Have you believed in that truth which is absolute and incontrovertible? Have you believed in Jesus and his words? That Jesus is who he says he is and that he can set you free? Have you believed that? You say, well, I have believed. Then I ask you this: are you obeying what you've believed? Are you obeying his words? Well, how will you know to obey unless you know what his words are? How will you know what to obey unless you read your Bible? Very, very simple, but how will you know unless you read it every day?